Good morning. Can you hear me? Great. I'm Mary Rosenberg, class of 78, Vice President of the AABC, and want to add my welcome to Hillary's. Thanks so much to all of you for returning to campus today and for sharing your time and abundant talents with Barnard. I'm especially impressed that so many of you are here for the presentation on Barnard's financial pictures so early on a Friday morning. You get extra credit. And I promise that what you're about to hear will be worth it. We are indeed fortunate to have Chief Operating Officer Rob Goldberg, Vice President for Development and Alumnae Relations, Lisa Ye, and Director of Annual Giving, Sally Vallimarescu, with us to provide an update on Barnard's financials. None of the wonderful work that goes on here would be possible without their stewardship and dedication to giving the college the firmest possible financial footing. And just a really brief background. So Rob came to Barnard 5 years ago to serve as the college's Chief Operating Officer, taking charge of the budget, finance, and policy management. He had been director of the Office of U.S. Foreign Assistance Resources at the Department of State, where he oversaw a $32 billion foreign assistance budget. During his government career, Rob also served as the Deputy Associate Director for International Affairs at the Office of Management and Budget, and has had experience overseeing programs at the Peace Corps. Lisa joined the college as VP of Development and Alumnae Relations nearly 2 years ago, coming on board in January 2018. Granted, she already had a positive and strong connection to the college since one of her children, Allison, is a Barnard graduate. Since Lisa had been Vice Dean of External Relations and Development at Columbia Business School for more than a decade, and at the Business School for 16 years, we're indeed fortunate that Lisa crossed Broadway to be part of our team. And I'm delighted to introduce Sally for her debut leadership assembly. Sally joined Barnard earlier this year in February. She comes to us from the Dalton School, where she was director of the Capital Campaign and Planned Giving. She was also director of their annual fund. Now, as an inspiration to all of us, especially our dedicated fundraisers, Sally started her fundraising career as a parent volunteer at Dalton when her 3 children went there, so it's just something to think about. An alumna of Bowdoin, Sally started her professional career as an international banker in Boston, New York, and London, and lived in London and Paris for a decade.
Thank you for that introduction. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. And a finance briefing first thing in the morning on a Friday is a challenge even for me. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be talking to all of you again. And thank you all so much for the support you give to the college. We really couldn't sort of manage without the help that you all provide in helping further our mission. So I'm going to try to push this button and see if a slide. Yep, there you go. So I have a couple of slides just to sort of show some of the financials. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I want to give everyone sort of the context of like what our finances look like. If you've been here before, this is going to look somewhat similar to prior years, but it's a little bit updated for this year. Just a quick look at the growth in our revenue and our operating expenses. So the red is the operating expenses and the blue is our revenue. And you can see that we've had fairly substantial growth in both over the last couple of years owing to increased enrollment, higher tuition and fees, which we'll get into in a second, and just the growth in what it costs to run the college. Our budget for 2020, which is the fiscal year that just started in July, is about a 6.5% increase over last year. And I would just say to keep in mind that sort of we pay a premium for sort of operating in New York City, as you all are probably well aware. So if we did nothing new, if we did nothing but keep the college exactly static, all we did was meet our obligations, our union contracts, and just keep the lights on, we would have to grow the budget 2.5% or 3% a year. So that's just the normal carrying cost of operating an institution in New York City. I've shown this before, but just kind of where does the money come from? And we say, and you've heard me say it before, that we are a tuition-dependent institution, and you can see the big blue wedge, like the Pac-Man that's sort of eating everything else, is our revenue from tuition and fees. And then on the left-hand side, sort of the red bar, is our room and board revenue, also known as auxiliary enterprises. So if you put those wedges together, it's just over 80% of our revenue. So 80% of our revenue comes from the charges we levy on our students. And that's just a function of a host of things. You can see that there are other components that are pretty critical to our revenue, which you all are involved in. One is fundraising, so the annual gifts that development goes out and raises for us that go right into the operating budget. This is about 7% of our budget, and then the endowment, the money we pull out of our endowment, is another 7% of our budget. So we really rely on philanthropy and the growth of our endowment to sort of augment revenue we get from tuition and fees. But just to put it in context, this is how our tuition and fees compare to the 34, 35 peer schools in the COFI cohort. So the top is total all-in term bill with room and board, and we're the third most expensive next to Chicago and Columbia. And you can see that there's a little bit of compression as you go down the line, but this is sort of where we are for this coming year. The one below is just tuition and fees. So if you back out room and board, and we're close to, we're creeping to the left, and you can see again in sort of our neighbors to the right and the left, there's very, very close in terms of what schools are charging. Right now, a first-year student who buys the highest meal plan and pays the room rate is paying just over $75,500. That's what it costs students, and that's a good. That's why most of our revenue comes from that charge. But I have to say that, and I know Jennifer Fundiller is going to come speak later about enrollment, but while our rates are going up and while all of the rates of all these schools are going up, our applications are through the roof. I'm sure President Barlock will tell you later that the rate of growth in applications for Barnard are higher than the rate of growth than they are for any one of these schools, including the Ivy Leagues. So we have to keep very wary of our price, and we have to be very sensitive to our price. But right now, we're still getting huge demand for the college, and so we have to sort of balance those things. In terms of our expenses, just over half of our expenses are people costs, salaries and benefits, which is the red wedge and the green wedge. And those are, this is a people-driven organization. We have faculty, staff, union employees that keep the college running day to day, and that's where most of our money goes. Financial aid is just about 20% of our budget, and you'll remember that we're need blind. We don't admit students based on their financial means, and so this is a part of the budget that's purely driven by need. We do not set a budget for financial aid. When I initiate the budget process annually, this is the one unknown that we have internally. And so if anything keeps me up at night in terms of how to manage the budget, it's what this number is going to be at the end of the admission cycle. And we try to predict, and we try to have ranges, and we try to make some plans. But given the cost of the college and sort of the class that enrollment brings in, admissions brings in, this number can go up or down depending purely on need. But it's an important part of our core values is need-blind admissions. And I will say that as our tuition goes up, so does financial aid. So not only for the incoming students, but for all the rising students. So we do not penalize rising students when we grow tuition. The other major part of our expenses is what's referred to here as OTPS, which is code for other than personnel services, which is all the non-personnel expenses, so all the stuff that we need to buy to operate the college. It's a whole mishmash of things. It's our utility bill, It's our payment to Columbia, it's equipment, it's supplies, it's the whole operation of the college is that sort of 20% or so of the budget. We have debt service, which I'll get into in a second, on some of our major capital projects, it's about 4.5% of the budget, and we keep a very small contingency for unknowns that happen during the course of the year. So in terms of debt service, just to remind folks that we have made several major capital improvements over the last several decades, and we're still paying debt service on those investments. So we're still paying debt service, a little bit left on Sulzberger Hall and Sulzberger Tower, on Cathedral Gardens, the Diana Center, and obviously the Milstein Center, which actually makes up now the bulk of our debt service. It's still it's a fraction of our operating budget. It's only 4.5%, so entirely manageable. But this is how we manage our major capital projects. We do it mostly through fundraising, but a portion of it is through financing. Just a quick note on the endowment, and I know Lisa's going to go into this in a minute. As of June 30th, our endowment was just approaching $364 million. That gives us, because we pull money out of the endowment every year for the operating budget, about just over $16 million. We're pulling out of it. We pull out 5% of a rolling average of the market value, so that's a big part of our operating revenue. And the bigger the endowment, the more money we can pull out of the endowment for the operating budget, and in theory, reducing pressure on tuition, which is why raising money for the endowment is really, really critical. We outsource the management of our endowment to a company called Strategic Investment Group out of Arlington, Virginia. They manage our investments. And as you know, the value of the endowment, the purpose of the endowment is to support not only today's students, but tomorrow's students. So we have to really make sure that we're maintaining the buying power of the endowment. And the endowment has seen some healthy growth over the past couple of years. The endowment grew a little bit less than expected this past year, just about 5.5%. And we're working with our endowment manager on what to do in the future to keep returns up. But when I got here, the endowment was, in the 200 range. Now we're in the 300 range. That's pretty good. The bigger it is, the healthier our operating budget can be in terms of what we want to do for the college. But I always like to show this chart because it just shows us sort of reality check. These are our endowment compared to our academic liberal arts peers. I don't put the Ivy League schools on here because Columbia's endowment is like $11 billion, and so you wouldn't have the scale. So these are our liberal arts peers. And you could see that the Williams, the Amherst, the Pomonas, the Swarthmores have multi-billion-dollar endowments. And I would say for those schools, remember I mentioned that our endowment seeds 7% of our operating budget. Those schools' endowments seed over 50% of their operating budget, right? And their tuition is still pretty high. So they're spending more per student from their operating budget than we are, simply because of the size of their endowment and the flexibility that gives. So, I'd like to say that we're going to catch up to these schools, but probably never, because these schools are still raising money, but we're not really trying to catch them. We're just trying to get to the right of this slide. The more money we can use to grow the endowment, the more we'll have for financial aid, the more we can endow faculty chairs, the more we can do other things and free up other money in the budget to fund other priorities. So this is a good sort of reality check on kind of where we are. And I think it sort of goes to the notion, and we say this a lot, and I think it's true, is that, given that we're one of the most selective colleges in the country, and we're one of the best schools in the country, with an endowment of our size, we like to say we punch above our weight, and we certainly punch above our weight, and this is proof positive of that, because these schools are no slouches. And as President Bilock will tell you, that our competition now is increasingly the Ivy League schools. So I hope I didn't make that too dry for a Friday morning budget presentation. Let me turn it over to Lisa, who can sort of talk more about the development side, and then we can take questions when we're all sort of done speaking. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Rob. So I'm going to focus on 4 main points. First, I want to thank you for all that you've done to help make last year such a success, and I'll get into the details in a minute. Second, I want to put a pin in some of the points that Rob made, especially about the endowment and our comparison with other schools. 3, I'm going to just briefly tell you, I've been here now almost 2 years, and give you just some highlights of some of the changes I've made in our office. I know many of you, because of your leadership roles, work with our office extensively, so I want to kind of highlight some of the things that we've done, also to help the last 2 years be a success. And then lastly, I want to let you know what you can do to continue to help us in all that we do. But to start, I want to thank you. Last year, we had one of our we had the highest number of donors from Barnard alumni in our history. We were able to turn around a downward trend in our participation. So for those of you who were here last year, I had mentioned that we were in a 3-year downward trend in our alumni participation, and there's actually a downward trend in the industry. And for a combination of reasons, and largely for the leadership of the AABC and many of you in this room, we were able to turn that around, and we went up a percentage. We still have a long way to go, but thank you for that. Really appreciate it. And want to say, the importance of participation, besides providing very meaningful resources, which you can tie into what Rob said, the U.S. News and World Report looks at participation and is considered in how they rank schools. And if we just increase participation and keep everything else the same, I think we can go up something like 10 spots in the U.S. News and World Report. So it's seen as a sign of the health of a community. I like to think of it as a vote of confidence in the institution, a vote of confidence in our leadership, a vote of confidence in our mission, and of course it provides very meaningful resources. So I'm repeating one of the slides that Rob showed you. This is our endowment, and it has had a nice growth. Unfortunately, because of our demands on our budget, in past years, some of your especially bigger gifts, not your annual fund gifts, have been diverted more to current use so we can spend them in the year that we receive them and not put them in the endowment and only spend 5%, which has inhibited our growth of our endowment some. So if we actually had a really strong annual fund, we would be able to encourage those who are making bigger gifts to think about putting those funds in an endowment. And I think, our problem is, somebody had asked me last year, what's more important, endowment or the annual fund? And for Barnard, both are equally important. We are never going to grow our endowment if we continue to have the pressures that we have on the budget and having to raise current use funds. And as long as we are diverting money to current use, we're never going to be able to grow the endowment to the levels we need to grow it. So both are really important. One way to solve that is to be building a bigger base of annual fund donors. Every gift, you add that up, and it really makes a substantial difference. And I'm repeating the slide that Rob shared, and I want to just give you some numbers to put this in perspective. So as Rob mentioned, we take off about $17 million from our endowment a year to add to our budget. A school like Wellesley, Swarthmore, they're taking off $100 million a year to put in their budget. So we are kind of working with our hands tied behind our back. The good news, I think, Barnard's always been very scrappy. We are an excellent steward of the resources we have, but we could be doing so much more by just increasing all of our giving, even a little bit. You look at some of the great institutions, the great higher ed universities. If you took away their endowments, they would not be the places that they are. There's a direct correlation between the resources they have and the excellence they're able to maintain. So to go back to the participation, we went up from last year, but you see where we still have a lot of opportunity. We're still behind both the women's colleges and then our the liberal arts, mainly the liberal arts college participation rates. I'm excited because I think, as we saw last year, by making a few changes and just starting to do more, we were able to see a change. And I think if we all can just stay focused on this, we'll be able to continue to make big increases. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've been up to. It's been a really fun 2 years. As some of you know who work more closely with my office, I've had a lot of changes. To me, they're all very positive changes. Brought on some great leadership. Sally is one of those folks. Karen is another one. Really bringing together a very strong team. We've worked on changing our office culture. We work all of the different units, whether it's our corporate and foundation relations, alumni relations, annual fund. We built out a major gifts team, which didn't exist when I got here. We work very closely with each other, and I think it's really, we're already starting to see the results from doing that. One of the things that we did, and you may have seen in our annual fund appeals, is that we've changed the messaging to not be so focused on just development talk, but to really be more representative of what Barnard is. We had the To Be campaign, and you'll be seeing more of that. The other thing that we did is to start educating our alumni. I will say, as we were starting to talk about participation in our endowment level, the one thing I heard more comment, over and over last year was I had no idea. I had no idea that our participation was so low. I had no idea how our endowment stood relative to other endowments. So we feel like just this education campaign has been really important in the success that we have had. We've also significantly increased class agents. So as many of you know, and I know I talked to a few of you last night about this, we had a model where we used class fund chairs. And for some of our classes, especially our older classes, it worked just fine. But for a lot of our classes, it wasn't as effective as it could be. So we opened up a new model to where anybody who wanted to be a class agent, who wanted to help in the fundraising, could do so. And I think we're up to 100 or almost 100 new fundraisers helping us. So in addition to the ones that we had before, which really speaks to the interest across the board in folks wanting to be helpful. I think that you will more likely give if one of your peers makes a case to you than if I do. And so we're real excited as we're rolling that out this year to see what the results will be. We've also worked on strengthening the alumni clubs. We are working closely with our faculty to have more faculty travel around and speak at the different clubs. We're also providing small stipends to many of the clubs. And then President Bylock and I are very focused on working on securing transformative gifts. These don't happen overnight. They're oftentimes, years in the making. But rest assured that we are out there beginning to speak in many cases with potential donors that can make the 15, 25, 50 million, 100 million type gifts. I think Barnard, now is the time for Barnard to have a $50 or $100 million gift. It may not happen this year, but we're going to make it happen. And then I've talked a little bit about the office. I've developed some new teams, and then really changing the office culture. So now, what can you do to help us? Make a gift of any amount. Many of you, most of you in this room, do support the annual fund in some way. Continue to do that. Be an ambassador. Speak to your former classmates, speak to other alumni about the importance of their giving, no matter what the size is. As you're giving, think about making your gift on Giving Day. It will take place October 23rd, and I think you're just starting to get a lot of emails related to that. Last year, I think we were up 60% in dollars on Giving Day and 30% in donors, and we were able to raise in one day $750,000. This year, our goal is $1 million. Just in case there's any confusion, all the gifts on Giving Day are to our annual fund, and it's just a way to kind of rally the Columbia and Barnard community around philanthropy. And so we want to take advantage of that day. And then continue to be the wonderful ambassadors that you are. Thank you all for your leadership, your partnership, and I'm really excited to see what we can do again this year. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sally Vallimarescu, and I am truly honored to be here as Barnard's new Director of Annual Giving. I know this is going to be a very challenging job, but challenges create opportunities, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully making a meaningful difference for Barnard's fundraising effort. I'd like to start by, as Rob and Lisa have done, just thanking everyone in this room. It's absolutely true when we say that we could not accomplish what we do without your hard work, and so I would just like to thank all of you for everything that you do on behalf of Barnard. It is so very important for the college. As I'm sure we would all agree, there is no better time, no more important time than right now to be focused on empowering and educating the next generation of women leaders. And in order to accomplish this, we need Barnard to thrive in all areas, and it does. As you've heard, the class of 2023 was the most selective in the college's history. 93% of the class of 2018 was working or enrolled in a graduate or professional program 6 months after graduation. And Barnard is one of the top producers of Fulbright scholars in the country, and the list goes on. An obvious outlier in all of this, as you've heard, is Barnard's participation rate. I'm going to be repeating a lot of what you've heard from Rob and Lisa, and I think the point here is to reinforce the message. Barnard's participation rate is very low. We can do better, we will do better, but we all really need to focus on this. As was mentioned, at 22%, we are ranked 24 among the top 25 liberal arts colleges, according to U.S. News and World Report. We did increase the participation rate, as has been mentioned, from 21 to 22%. This reversed the 3-year decline and also bucked the national downward trend. Don't misunderstand me, this is all great news, but we still have a lot of work to do. Our goal for this year is an ambitious 25% participation rate. I think this is much more difficult to achieve than one might realize, particularly when our alumni base keeps growing year after year. This year, it will take 325 new donors to move our participation rate by 1 percentage point, which means we need a total of 975 new donors this year in order to reach our goal. And that assumes that everyone who made a gift last year continues to make a gift again this year. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Barnard has a renewal rate of around 65 to 70%, which is also very low, not very low, but it is low in comparison to our peer schools. So, in fact, it's going to take a lot more than just 975 new donors in order to reach our goal. However, I am confident that with the help of everyone in this room and the many others who are not here but who have expressed an interest in helping us with our fundraising initiative, we will be able to do this. As Lisa just mentioned, we are tweaking our fundraising approach this year by opening it up to anyone who wants to be involved. We decided that it would make much more sense to make this a very welcoming, inclusive effort on the part of the college. Our annual fund goal for fiscal year 20 is $6.8 million. That's $800,000 more than last year. And our 4-year goal is $10 million. The only way we are going to reach this goal is with an army of fundraising volunteers, and I'm thrilled to report that we really are off to a great start. As of today, we have 186 volunteers signed up to serve as class agents. And as Lisa mentioned, 100 of these people are new to fundraising at Barnard. This is absolutely amazing, and I think bodes very well for the future of fundraising at Barnard. Recruiting new fundraising volunteers will be an ongoing process, so I encourage anyone in the room who's interested to please let me know or any of the other gift officers. It's interesting to note that I started the year with a goal of having 200 class agents by June of 2020, and I will readily admit that I never in a million years imagined that we'd essentially be there right now, end of September, beginning of October, with 186 class agents. So I think this is all great news. I think we are going to have a fantastic year, but it is going to take a lot of work, and so I thank you in advance for everything that you're going to be doing to help us this year. Now I would like to take a few moments to just recognize those classes that achieved certain milestones in the last two reunion years, 2018 and 2019. The fundraising volunteers for these classes will receive a special letter of acknowledgement from the college, and a plaque with their class year on it will be placed in Salzburger Breezeway. But I'd also like to mention them here because the accomplishments of these classes is truly significant. So first, for having raised a total of $300,000 or more in their reunion year, I'd like to congratulate the class of 1994 on the occasion of their 25th reunion last year, and the class of 1983 on the occasion of their 35th reunion in 2018, and the class of 1963 on the occasion of their 55th reunion in 2018. I'd also like to acknowledge the following classes for having raised a total of $3.5 million or more in the 5 years leading up to and including their reunion last year. Congratulations to the class of 1984 on the occasion of their 35th reunion, the class of 1974 on the occasion of their 45th reunion, and the class of 1969 on the occasion of their 50th reunion. And finally, there are a few classes that achieved both the $300,000 one year and the $3.5 million 5-year reunion goals, which is truly amazing. So my heartfelt congratulations go out to the class of 1989 on the occasion of their 30th reunion last year, the class of 1964 on the occasion of their 55th reunion last year, and to the class of 1988 on the occasion of their 30th reunion in 2018, and the class of 1968 on the occasion of their 50th reunion in 2018. So thank you to all of those classes. So now in closing, I would like to ask a favor of each of you in this room. You could truly make a difference for Barnard by committing to make a gift to the annual fund this year. If you could do this on Giving Day, as mentioned by Lisa, on October 23rd, that would be even better. You could have an even greater impact on the college by convincing 2 or maybe even 3 of your friends who did not make a gift last year to do so this year. This would make a big difference to the college. And remember that the amount is not important. We welcome gifts of all sizes, large and small, and everything in between. It is not the amount that matters, it is your participation that matters. Thank you very much.
So that was a lot of information. Happy to take questions. Yeah?
Hi.
Hi.
So my first question is, are all the other schools that we are comparing ourselves to need blind?
No.
Of those, We are considered, I went over the U.S. News and World Report ratings this year, and I noticed when I drilled down that at least 32% of the ratings in that gauge, in their criteria, are based on peer reviews, which are done by other administrators at other private schools. And among those criteria that determine the peer reviews are such things as the fame and success of their alumni. So it has nothing to do with participation or donations. It has to do with whether people perceive the school, and the people whose perception we are relying upon are the administrators of these other schools with these great big fat endowments, just saying. My point here was that Barnard right now is in a really unique position because we have a lot of high-profile graduates that are floating around out there. We've got Greta Gerwig. I mean, I'm talking younger, but we also have Maria Hinojosa. We have a lot of very high-profile media folks. And I just would like to say my class has a very abysmal participation rate that's based on some unique things that we need to deal with. But this is our 40th, and I was really hoping that we could do extremely well. And by the way, I'd like to also say that I think you have made a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and that you are continuing to do that. And I just want to bow to your great achievements. So the need blind, the last thing was the salaries of our alumni, because we were rated 34 in all the liberal arts colleges, equally with McAllister College, which is in, I don't know, Wichita or something.
Yep.
Yes, and the level of awareness, in other words, among our peers in liberal arts and administrators is the same as McAllister, but when you look at their endowment, it's like billions more. So clearly there's something going on there. So all I would like to say is I think we can move the marker up, not necessarily by returning to our same stock of donors and repeating, as certain political parties do with me, but also to increase the non-monetary elements by capitalizing upon our alumni and raising the profile and potentially doing events that are going to give us some notice publicly. And thank you for listening.
And thank you. I love that you look so closely at the ratings, the rankings. Note that we do the same as a senior team, and we're not just looking at the rankings and looking at participation and what we can do in participation. We are looking at all the levers. You may have noticed, related to your point about high-profile alumni, we have I think much more aggressive publicity campaign about our alums, both those that are household names and those that are not, that are truly vanguards in what they do. We have many, many of those. So Sion's very focused on making sure, if you look at all of our materials, getting more of those stories out. So we are looking at all of the other areas as well.
So I'm 81, so next fiscal year is our 40th. And what I'm interested in is if other classes or the office has crafted a message to convert a reunion-only givers into every-year givers. Because I think, the occasion of the fundraising for the 40th would be a good time to talk about that.
I think, the philosophy, and not just here, but I think most places, is that we would like everyone to give something every year. And think about your reunion as the time to do something special. Now, so it's really
Right, but
more
I find
that.
my classmates who think of the reunion as something to do something special,
Right.
think of it as, okay, I did that, and 5 years from now I'll do it again. And
Right.
like that, really, there's a fairly large set of my fellow alums who seem to be very, you can go back and look at it, and they're reunion only,
Yeah.
and they're contacted the same way as everybody else is every year and all of that,
Right.
but it's just not.
Right.
So if we're talking about participation now, like to craft a message perhaps focused on those
On that,
people.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
a good point.
Could you explain what the significance of giving on Giving Day is, and whether there are certain matching funds that are
Yes.
made available depending upon how much we raise?
Yeah. The significance is that it's a way to also have a point in time where we are acknowledging and celebrating philanthropy. So a lot of organizations are doing this. The other significance is that a lot of people, having more of fanfare around the act of giving just raises the awareness for a lot of folks that may not be paying attention to our kind of day-to-day appeals. We do find that, I think, I was at Columbia when we first rolled out Giving Day, and I think we were a little worried that all we were doing is taking donors who may give in the spring and moving them to the fall. And what we found is that's not true, and same at Barnard, that what we are actually doing is increasing our donor base. While there are some that moved up their gifts a little bit earlier, we're actually appealing to a lot of folks who didn't otherwise make a gift. We are finding that Giving Day can be particularly effective with the younger classes. Those, frankly, are the classes that we have the hardest time, and we're not unique to that, in having a higher participation. So there's a lot of social media around it. There's a lot of things that I think appeal to the younger donors. So, and then as far as the matches, we are fortunate in that the Columbia trustees put up matches for various, there's many different competitions. There's the most international donors in an hour. I can't even think of half of them. There's a lot of them. And schools are eligible for funds depending on where they rank. Also, last year, because I think we ranked third in the largest increase in donors, we received some matching funds from Columbia. I think last year we received about $25,000 from Columbia. So we have the Columbia match. And this year, for the first time, our Barnard trustees are doing a match just for Barnard to match new gifts up to $1,000. And they've already committed, actually, we were pleased to learn last night, our goal was to get at least $200,000 from the trustees, and we're already at like $220,000. So there are significant matches and challenges in place.
Thank you. My name is Roz Paswell. I'm with the class of '59. I have a bunch of very quick questions. And first, do we have any major capital projects in our 10-year plan?
We do.
Okay. I'm not going to ask.
Yeah.
I'd like to know about
Yeah,
this, but
so just real quick, we have sort of a couple of efforts, sort of major efforts. One is we're looking very closely now at the science building and trying to renovate the science building and figuring that out. We're undertaking a campus-wide look at all of our spaces because we've got some spaces that we think are underutilized or not efficiently used. The old pool, for example, is one of them. And so right now we're at the point where we've got to figure out, like, how do we use every square inch of our space in the right, most efficient way, and that's going to require some capital investment. And then we're looking at doing the things we have to do to maintain our buildings just to keep them operating. There's a 100-year difference in ages between our buildings, and so it creates all kinds of maintenance and financial challenges. So those are the main lines of effort. So that's the biggest capital project, a la like the Milstein Center is really Altshuler Hall, and it's not necessarily building a new building, it's really renovating inside of
are we going to finance those through contributions or the debt?
Probably a combination.
Okay. The slice of our pie chart that you showed for grants it looks very small to me, and I want to ask you is that just excuse me, the amount of the grants that we can take into general operations and the actual grant money itself is not in there? And if that's the case, do you know how much our faculty raises?
Yeah, they were both in there. There were sort of federal grants for research,
right.
And it's about the same percentage. Let me see if I can. So to your question on the wedges, the federal grants and state grants is really the research funds that the faculty pull in every year. And the private gifts and grants is the annual money that just comes right into the operating budget.
But my question on the research grants, is that the total amount raised, or is that the slice that you take off for overhead?
This is the amount of cash we bring in. So in some ways, we can get a multi-year research grant for $2 million, and it'll spend over 5 years, and we're just reflecting the cash, the
Okay.
annual cash.
So that, all right,
yeah.
that looks, I may
Yeah.
be wrong, but that's.
We
looks
actually,
really
our
low.
faculty actually are very, very, we've gotten a lot of grant money particularly from NIH and other federal agencies, and so this is really reflecting is sort of the cash that we're booking for that years of.
Just one last
Sure.
one. And, you said, how do we raise money for the endowment? I know that all of my fundraising is focused on annual giving. I've never asked for
Right.
anything from the
Right.
endowment. How do you
Right.
do that?
Right. I mean, it really depends on, someone has to have the capacity or the ability to make those type of gifts. But normally, what we do, if we identify folks, either they've told us or, we have a sense, we will talk about our needs related to the endowment. So we will talk about the need to have more endowed chairs. And then they'll say, well, how much does an endowed chair cost? And we'll say $3 million. And the folks who have that ability would say, I'd be interested in that. Let's talk more. For endowed gifts, almost all endowed gifts can be paid over 5 years, so they could pay the $3 million over 5 years. But that it starts with a conversation with folks who have that ability, and sometimes you don't know and you're kind of guessing, and some people will say, no, I'm not able to make a gift of that size, and you're like, that's fine, make a gift of whatever size you're able to make. But it's really having that conversation and introducing the idea of making, a bigger gift.
So outside the income that's earned on the endowment funds, how much do we raise every year in new gifts to the endowment?
All right. Oh, I should have brought that slide. But I'll give you a little bit of perspective in just how much we raise. And this also goes back to thanking you for over the last 2 years. The last 2 years, and I'm going to talk big first and then go down more specifically, our fundraising each year was higher than the average of the prior 10-plus years, including the year where $100 million was raised because we had 3 $25 million gifts for the Milstein Center. Historically, and I'll have to think, I can see the chart in my head, but historically, the current use amount has been much higher than the endowment amount. So say if the average is around $40 million, I would say the total current use amount, or amount that went to current use, was probably over half that. The last 2 years, especially last year when I didn't understand the need for current use, we significantly increased the endowment amount. And then I think understanding the budget constraints, so that was the year before last. This past year, our current use went up a little bit higher, but still not as high as it was in the prior years. I don't know if that helps. But I would say you can think about this year our fundraising overall goal is $46 million. Of that, and mostly endowment amounts probably around $20 million, which is higher than it's been in the past.
So I said that was my last question, but I lied.
That's all right.
The challenge of the participation rate, first among women, and secondly among Barnard women, has always vexed me. Is there any academic or research insight into why that's the case? I know I can give anecdotes about the responses I get when I call, women of our class, which was a zillion years ago. It just bothers the hell out of me when they say, I have to ask my husband.
Yes.
Because I can assure you,
Yes.
their husbands don't say the same.
Right.
But overall, do we
Yeah.
have any insight?
Yeah, so I think, so anecdotally, I would say that's one, and then especially for Barnard women, who many have married Columbia men, the families give, but they're giving to Columbia. But more on the research side, and this research isn't done specifically looking at giving, but just in general, women tend to be more risk averse. So I think they're more, and that's why we also see a little bit higher rates in planned giving, because they're thinking, I need to make sure that I have enough resources to take care of my family, and where a lot of men are more, I will always have enough resources. They're not as, they're more risk-taking than women. So I think that's a part of it.
With Giving Day just basically around the corner, there's not a lot of time for those of us who are class agents to reach out to our classmates. So what are you doing via social media to reach out to inform class agents? And it also might be a good idea, I've seen a lot of us, and I know I did it myself, to set up birthday pages for fundraising. And it might not be a bad idea, especially as we're now in our 50 year, to start putting some more information out and be more specific about giving an endowment to the college now that we're working on our wills.
That's great. I would appreciate that. Do you want to talk about Giving
Just
Day?
regarding Giving Day, next week, you will start to hear, all of the class agents will start to hear from their assigned gift officers, and so we still have plenty of time to roll this all out, and we are going to be initiating a huge campaign where we will be informing each of the class agents. We will be giving each person a number of people to contact in your class, either via texting, email, however you want to reach out to people. But we plan, there's a huge campaign that will be rolled out beginning next week that will also be accompanied by social media posts on a daily basis. There'll be mailings. So this is all being rolled out next week, so stay tuned.
Thanks. I'm Rona Wilk. I'm actually the AABC reunion chair and class of 1991 class officer. I actually have, 3 questions/observations, and I say them with love. One, in terms of the class agent strategy, the strategy to increase annual giving, my feeling has always been, and it continues to be, and I'm putting it as a through thread at reunion, you can't ask people for money until you give them a reason to give money. And that's where the idea of connection comes in. And I want to know, is there a strategy in place between development and alumni relations to make that connection before we kind of go after
Yes.
this thing?
Yes.
2, I was also curious about the 300,000 plus gifts and the other large reunion donors. And what is the percentage of giving there? Or is it that someone, made a $3 million gift and then the 500,000 is, everything else?
Yeah.
And 3, we have one of the most competitive admissions rates in the country. So what is it about the U.S. News and World Report rankings that is so critical to us? Because it seems like it certainly doesn't affect people actually wanting to come here.
I'll leave that to you. All right. I'll go kind of in the middle, and then I'll go to your first one. I'll let Rob do the last one.
I was going to let Sian.
Yeah, or yes, Sian could do it. Okay, so now let me think. What was the middle one was?
$300,000.
Oh, yeah, that percentage. I don't have the specifics, and it changes by class, but in some of the classes, yes, it is a handful of people making larger gifts, and it really varies by class. So that one, we have the statistics, but I don't have it off the top of my head, only because it's so idiosyncratic per class. And to go back to your question about alumni relations, my philosophy, and it's a new one for Barnard, is that everyone in my office, alumni relations, annual fund, major gifts, corporate relations, we are all doing the same things. We want to help promote pride in Barnard. We want to better engage our community, and we want to raise funds. So it doesn't matter if you're on the alumni relations team or you're on the annual fund team, we're trying to achieve the same things. So all of our strategies are coordinated. I actually sit next to Karen. We have everybody intermixed within the office. We have our annual fund gift officers work very closely with alumni relations. We're looking for points to connect alumni in whichever way we can. So we're doing it kind of in many different kind of cross sections. One, we're doing it by region, so that's where our strategy supporting our regional clubs is really important. We're doing it by class year, and that's where I think the reunion programming comes in is really important. And we're starting to do a lot more by shared interest groups. We are looking to put together some programming, and remember that all of this costs money. It takes people to help support this and then to put these programs on. But we're looking to do programming around alumni interested in the arts. about putting together groups of our alumni who are scientists, who are doctors, who are in media. So we're doing all of these cross sections, hoping that you as an alumni will find at least one, if not more than one, to connect with.
Just on the U.S. News, I would have to defer to Sian on the value that ranking places given our demand. I would just say that I think there's a little frustration among us and around the fact that a lot of what U.S. News is counting is spending per student, and so it sort of favors the schools with bigger endowments and who are able to spend more per student. And we're also not being, I think, accurately credited with our relationship with Columbia, because we're getting value, our students are getting value from access to libraries and other things, which we do pay a fee for, but we're really not paying, the fee doesn't really represent the value of the benefit that access to Columbia's curriculum and access to Columbia's libraries and access to the athletic consortium all provide students. And there's no way in the U.S. News criteria to sort of value that. So we feel, and I think President Bylock can sort of explain this much more articulately than I can, that if we were able to figure out with U.S. News how to capture that relationship, which is unique in the country, as you all know, we would rise in the rankings, because right now we're sort of being not credited. We're not being penalized necessarily for it, but we're not being credited with that, and that's the value of the education of our students is the nature of the relationship with Columbia. Could we opt out of U.S. News? I suspect we could. I don't know. We've never thought of that before, but I don't know if we would want to. I think that's a strategic question. Let me ask over here. I don't know how we're doing on time. Yeah.
This is a technical question
Yeah.
for Giving Day. I mean, it's really fun on Giving Day to have everybody like charging their stuff on their credit cards and everything. But if you were going to make a gift that you couldn't charge on your credit card, so how do you mechanically do that
make a
and
gift
have
if you
it
can't charge on your
be
credit
counted for Giving Day?
Giving Day. So we have, there's an early give period that starts October 9th and ends the day before Giving Day. And you can send in a check, send it with the note that says this gift is for Giving Day. If you're making a gift by wire or stock gift, also notify us, try to have that gift come in during that time period and notify us that that's your annual fund gift for Giving Day.
I think we have time for one more question. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we missed you. Right here. Here you go. Last question.
Thank you. I have actually a statement rather than a question, and that is that our class annual gifts is about double the average of Barnard's participation rate by class. And our class officers feel that the key to that is our outreach and contact with class members. And we have a whole handful of ways that we are reaching out to other class members, which I'd like to share briefly with everyone here and hope that some other classes will pick up on some of these things. For one thing, we have a class council, which consists of people who are just interested in being involved, and we meet by teleconference a few times a year with everyone participating and sharing ideas, and as a result of that, we encourage mini reunions. We have also taken advantage of the ability to send out emails to everyone in the class through Barnard, so we keep in touch with our class members. We have set up something we call expanded class notes, which is online. Our class representatives reach out to people and encourage them to get in touch. And because the magazine can only include 500 words, we have lengthy letters from classmates that are included in this expanded class notes so that people really keep in touch. We have an online virtual book club, which includes over 40 members of class members around the globe. And they choose together books to read and then submit comments and replies and so on online. So there's an active conversation. We have a class Facebook page that is limited to class members where people can post things. We have also, we're considering, or not considering, we're in the process of setting up an online movie club to share movie ideas and entertainment ideas with other class members, and people can use that to get together and participate in some of those things. I don't know if I mentioned mini reunions, but class council members set up mini reunions so people in particular locations can get together for a social event or a cultural event. And our most recent undertaking is something we are calling This Stage of Life, which is an online website open only to class members to share resources and comments and their class stories for class members, since we're all at the same stage of life and going through all kinds of challenges singly and together.
Great.
63.
Yeah. Thank you for that feedback. What a great way to end this session. I want to thank all of you. Part of today is to get updates from the school, but it is also to learn from each other how you can be better engaged and to better engage your classmates. But thank you all.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna try to do this.
Great.